Welcome back to A Good Pour. This is Conversations About Good Work. Today we have Desnéige VanCleve, who has been asked by several people, lots of people over the course of this last year that we've been doing this podcast to be on. She is the founder and CEO of Grace Place Ministries, which we're going to talk about today. I'm just so glad you're here. I'm so glad that you're a part of our communities and just can't wait to talk to you. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
I love your good work.
I love yours too. That's what we're here, right? We need more good work. So I love you and Grace Place, of course, but one of the reasons is you're living my mission of helping organizations tell about their good work. We want to be top of mind and top of search and all those things when it comes to marketing. But a lot of that is having other people tell your story. And that is done really well for Grace Place. When I first started A Good Pour, when it was just, we sat in stomping grounds in Hendersonville.
Yes.
And during that, when we did A Good Pour that way in the conversations, I would always ask, what's your favorite charity? And Grace Place, and this was back in 2001, so 3 years ago, was repeatedly top of mind. And that comes from you telling that story. And you do it well, you do it often, and you can feel it throughout the community. I do want you to give a short. I feel like a lot of people know it, but I think the first question is always kind of tell us about your organization and the good work you do. So will you give us just a summary? And then I'd love to dive into some deeper questions about you.
Absolutely. So, yes, Grace Place is a local nonprofit here in Sumter County. We serve women and children who are experiencing homelessness. We're located in Hendersonville, but we do serve all Sumter County families in need. When Grace Place opened, it opened because I had a position at a local church and I ran the benevolence ministry. And so I was just front and center to a lot of different types of crisis in the community. And one of the most heartbreaking ones for me was the different moms who would call with so many different situations, but basically they were homeless with their kids or they were going to be very quickly. And as I would talk to these mothers and just ask questions and try to understand more completely, it was just so evident that it was so much more than not having a place to live. It was employment. It was transportation in a county that doesn't have public transportation. It was the cost of housing. There were so many different barriers and obstacles that each mother would have to overcome for a sustainable situation. And so through that process, through that position, God just revealed this, enormous calling on my life. And I always knew that I felt like it was going to be something that we wanted a complete restoration to happen. And so that's Grace Place's mission statement, is empowering single mothers in need and their children toward developing healthy, safe, and independent lives in the local community. And so it's a very holistic approach, but our program is built and worked and followed and with the hopes of making sure that our families never experience homelessness again. Mm-hmm. And so we make sure that while our families are with us, we can eliminate every single obstacle and every single barrier within reason. Mm-hmm. And so, over 9 years, we're going to celebrate our 10-year anniversary next year, which is unbelievable to me still. 87% of our families are still independent over that 9 years. And so it's been a wild ride. It's been amazing. And the work is very rewarding. And of course, as a founder, I'm super passionate and definitely feel like it is good work.
It is for sure. So you have a very recent announcement.
We did.
Well, the announcement came a while ago, but you had the groundbreaking.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, we did it. We finally broke ground. I feel it's just been such a wild journey. We had our feasibility study for this expansion that we've always been talking about, because Grace Place in our current location, that was always where we were going to get started. It was always where we were going to build credibility as an organization, get through the first 3 years for a nonprofit, which over 80% of them don't make it past that 3 years. So
did you know that then?
I did.
Okay, good.
I did, because before, God really put that calling on my life specifically for Grace Place, I'd already gone back to school for ministry, and I already knew that I did want to be in the nonprofit sector, serving in that capacity. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I did know.
God was working on a foundation.
Yes, for sure. And in, my classes for my concentration, it was so interesting how much I learned about nonprofits, first of all, but one of them was that huge We're going to need a redo on that. That statistic, over 80% of nonprofits do not make it past that 3 years. And then you can feel pretty confident in the overall sustainability of your nonprofit if it makes it past 5 years.
Okay.
So those were huge milestones for me that I celebrated for sure. Yeah.
And COVID was like year 5? Or, I mean, it had to have been like halfway in between
So
there.
we opened in 2015, and then COVID happened in 2020. Our feasibility study with donors, which is just you check the pulse of all of your network of donors and supporters when you're going to do an expansion just to see how they feel about it, because their feedback is going to dictate whether it's likely that you'll be able to raise the support and whether the community is going to wrap its arms around the expansion that you want to do. And even in the first quarter, I mean, during quarantine, our feasibility study came back very positive.
Okay.
So that was really good. So that set us up to keep going, keep working towards it. But, I mean, it took us 2 years to find land. You're not going to start a capital campaign or really get into the weeds of the work for that until you have a future site. There's all kinds of things that have to happen in the right order to really prepare the community to make sure that you have the greatest likelihood for success. And so it was just this grueling process of having to wait and God seemingly opening doors but then slamming them shut, and having to cope through that and figure that out and still just have faith and trust that when the right door is going to open, it's going to, and you're going to be able to walk through it. You will.
Yeah.
So yes, the groundbreaking was huge.
And you are adding to your name?
We are, thanks to you for our wonderful new logo. We're excited. Yeah, we are, once we actually have a ribbon cutting and we're able to start operating at the new campus, we're going to officially be Grace Place Amplified, because we're going to be doing what we're doing already, but just bigger and better. And it's going to have an amplified presence in the community.
Yes.
So that word was very fitting in a lot of ways. And then our moms, it was so sweet when I told them I felt like that was where the Lord had led me on a name for the new campus. They were like, they just started quoting all these different things. Well, Grace Place has amplified everything good in me. And it was this really sweet time with the families, and they confirmed more than anything that was the right name.
Right.
But we're excited. We're going to introduce a new program we've never had at the new campus too. So we're excited about that.
Great. Tell me what community, I mean, when you have an event, you always recognize your board and
our alliance.
But I know that the people that came around this specific project, tell me what those people meant to you.
Well, it's, now that we're expanding and we're raising all the support for such an enormous expansion. I mean, the scale of this is huge. I felt the same way, though, about the scale of what I was trying to do in 2013 when I started. It took 2 years for Grace Place to actually open. And there's just something really special about those people who raise their hand first. Mm-hmm. And because they're risking a lot. They're choosing to walk beside you and come alongside you in an enormous way, believing in a vision, and ultimately trusting in the Lord that we're all on the same page, and that it is going to be worth it. And so those initial people who get on board with any kind of a vision are always going to be so special to me. I will thank God for them till the day I die, because it's a lot. It's a lot. And you've got donors who are so careful that they won't get on in the beginning. They're going to wait, and they're going to see how it goes. And then once it's more believable and they can, buy into it a little bit more, then they'll jump in too.
Did you have to expand, I guess, talent? I mean, because you've had to get developers and people searching for land, and
yes,
I mean, it's a new type of support, I would think.
It is, and even just my position in general has just changed so much. So from an internal perspective, I've had to grow my staff team to be able to get them ready for what we'll be doing at the expansion level. But then also, when we were searching for land, it was funny. I had a conversation with my board chair. Finally, after 2 years, I was like, something's got to give. This is just crazy. Because, other nonprofits such as Habitat, they were looking for land too. So there was an active body of people who would come to them and be like, hey, have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? And I would hear those stories, and I'd be so happy for Habitat. I love Habitat, but I'd be like, nobody is coming to me with any ideas for where we can build this expansion. expansion. What is going on? And so I had a conversation with Amanda, and I realized that because of some of the like industry professionals that we had on our board, that people might not be, they might think that, well, Amanda's in real estate. She's got that. She's watching. And she was. But I would much rather have every realtor in Sumter County watching.
Right.
And so that's one great example of just pulling in the experts, because I contacted, at the time, it was Dave Cheney, the president of Sumner Realtors Association. I was like, look, this is what we're trying to do. The first real estate agent who brings us something that we can do a due diligence on and get a contract on is going to get that deal. Like we're not already working with somebody. I feel like people might have misconceived that part too, that we already had somebody we were working with as far as an agent. So he was willing to send that email from me to the top 25 agents in the county. And then it was a brand new, super motivated and eager agent who sent us the listing that we got. And I mean, you know how it went. I mean, I had to convince the whole city of Hendersonville, the Board of Planning and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to rezone from commercial and industrial to multifamily, which everybody said that is never going to happen. And I was just like, guys, like, God can sweep through any room and move any heart. And we are going to have to trust that. We've got to try something. Yeah. And so here we are finally.
Well, congratulations on
you.
that. And you've always been bold, which is just part. You and I are
Sometimes
both bold.
Sometimes to a fault. Sometimes to a fault.
You know, we learned from that boldness, right?
I'm probably going to be learning for the rest of my life, because that's been a hard one to learn.
But, you know, it's really been, well, one, I think I really started hearing about Grace Place I feel like right after COVID. And I think, I don't know that you and I have specifically talked about this, but I think it's because you didn't let COVID stop you.
No, we couldn't.
And you just kept going. And I think you were the first event out of the gate when it was okay to have events.
Yes, we
you
were.
filled that room, which I think when we were so ready to start talking about something that was not the pandemic, at least in this community, Grace Place rose to the top of the conversation.
Right.
Which I think amplified, you know, what you were doing. Oh, I mean, you may have been intentional about it, but I also think it was timing and just, you know, we all wanted to be in that room. We all wanted.
Everybody was so excited to get out.
Yes.
And to be amongst each other again. Yes.
And so you really took advantage of that. But I would say it's also, you know, you had the foundation, you had the vision, you're telling the story. And so when you were able to get that many people in a room, when we all craved to be together and you got to tell that story, it was so neat. But I've also seen you now move to not just telling Grace Place's story. You're telling the story of what I feel like every nonprofit leader is saying, and that is we have a huge housing problem.
Right.
You know, you have a full system that deals with money and transportation and all of these things to better the family in order for them to start. But so much of it is based on housing, right? Like you have to have somewhere to live. And so whether that's Habitat or United Way or CASA or all these nonprofits that I talk to, it just, you hear about this housing problem over and over again. And so you got up, you know, you've had everyone stand in that room and commit to supporting this, right? So why is affordable housing such the kind of foundational fix, if you will, and not affordable, attainable? I mean, we can't, there's nothing right now.
Because there's affordable from a financial perspective, but then there's all the different things that restrict people from being able to even rent. And I do have to be clear, because there is a lot of talk about affordable housing. And so, you know, one of the things that the Lord has really laid on my heart, especially this year, with the influence that Grace Place has and the fact that people are listening. They are listening and they are hearing. And it is changing perspectives and it's reshaping mindsets. When I talk about affordable housing, I am talking exclusively about affordable rental housing, density, you know, the things that the community hates to hear, really, and that we have all of these opinions toward. And the reason why I want to make that clear is because I don't want this message and my influence to be used in the other affordable housing conversations that are more focused on home ownership.
Yes.
And
that
not that I
makes
don't
sense.
approve it. I mean, not that I'm not super supportive of it. I am super supportive of home ownership. That's the end goal, hopefully, for all of our families one day. But there's an enormous part of the population that simply cannot buy a home. And that was an enormous
And
part of
that's
our population.
increasing,
Before the housing market went crazy, right? So my advocacy, and I do want to make sure that my voice is used for that specific cause. I'm not worried about homes being built that people can buy. I actually have the worst message ever to try to get people to support. And it is truly because, people will talk about apartments, and we have a ton of apartments. Yes, we do. And a lot of them are empty because people cannot afford them.
Right.
But if you go to the more affordable apartment complexes, there's waiting lists. I mean, it's so sad that when I call, or when Lisa Jo or any of my staff people, when we do our own data collecting, we'll get something as absurd as a 6-year wait. So yes, we have a ton of apartments, and I'm never going to be, storming city halls in favor of more of these luxury apartments. No, because they're sitting empty. Nobody can afford them. You can get one of those very easily if you have the money. But when we're talking about the population that I serve, and even, more lower middle class, I mean, heck, even our middle class right now, I'm talking about apartments that they can afford. We don't need more apartments overall, but we definitely need more affordable apartments. And I believe there's a way to make that happen where everybody wins.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I hear a lot, it's a nationwide problem. Everyone's dealing with this. It's not fixable. But I hear you saying a very different message.
Yes, it absolutely is. And it starts with people. It starts with how we view these things. It starts with us understanding the broader picture. And that's where I'm really focusing a lot of my effort in those conversations, is on the economy, our workforce, how this is hurting small businesses because we don't have workers here who can afford to live here. It's a greater population than people think, too. I mean, I've said it's our teachers, it's our healthcare workers, it's our police, it's our fire. It's just so many industries are impacted by the lack of housing, and so affordable housing. And so I'm trying to make sure that the conversation isn't just, which this would be enough for me because it's what I do. It's enough for me to hear, hey, people are ending up homeless in our community because we don't have affordable housing. But I understand that emotional piece of this, and just my heart of hearts that just breaks at night, every night, to know that that's happening to anybody. And I'm not just saying single mom and kids. I'm saying any couples out there, any families out there, any vets, anybody in our community who's struggling like that or experiencing that. That's the number one cause of homelessness, is lack of affordable housing.
Well, and it's, they have jobs. They are trying to afford childcare. So they can get to their jobs, and, they're trying not to have to live 45 minutes away for a job that's right here. So it's not, it's changing the perspective, right? Because there's all these, assumptions that people make.
Yeah, but the conversation has to be bigger than emotion and even sensationalism. It has to make sense. It has to be logical too. And there are people in the community, our community is ready for that. And they're willing to hear those things. They're willing to have those conversations when they understand. And so that's where I feel like the Lord has called me to a very specific purpose in making sure that I'm a part of helping people understand, like, it's not what you think it is. Lower, affordable housing next to your subdivision. There is no statistical evidence that has ever hurt the worth of homes. You know what I mean? So there's just a whole lot of things out there that people believe that aren't necessarily true. But also even the things that might ring true, when you weigh it against all the other pros of making this available in our communities, it's just such a no-brainer at the end of that conversation.
Yeah.
So, but housing is a local policy issue, and how you strategize. You have to have your local leaders, you have to have your local politicians on board, and our local politicians are just listening to the people.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm just trying to talk to the people.
Yeah.
I'm trying to talk to the people. I had them stand so that everybody can see this is a room full of tons and tons of servant leaders, tons and tons of really influential people in our community. And they're standing because they do support us trying to find solutions. And I wanted that to be the message. Like, if you talk about it, if you focus on the things that people really do care about, people are going to get on board.
Right.
They really are.
Right.
When they see the big picture and not just the tiny little parts of, things that they've always thought to be true or focused on more.
So you are now speaking directly to a, I don't want to call it a political problem, but a bigger problem than just your day-to-day work, right?
Right, yeah.
Are you challenged at all to keep kind of Grace Place and the work you have to do there, you get to do there? You're being called by God and others at this point, at the community, to be a voice in this space. So how are you juggling all that?
Well, it's funny because it is Grace Place. When we opened in 2015, in 2013, when I was like arguing with God about whether I was going to walk in obedience and do this, one of the things that I begged him for was, Lord, please do not ask me to do anything political. Like, I'm like...
That's like when I said, I don't want to start my own business. So.
Yes, it's like you say the one thing, but here is how sweet and how kind our Lord is, truly. Because in 2013, there's no way I could have done it. Mm-hmm. There's no way. And he knew that. And so he perfectly packages this home where we can get started on a lot that was already zoned for our use. Like, we had no political barriers at all to open and get started. And I think back on that, and it's just so interesting to me because he knew that a part of my job was going to become political, not because I am political. I hate everybody equally as far as politics are concerned. But it's, housing is political. Unfortunately, it is. There's just a ton of different legislation that goes into it, policy that affects it. From a local standpoint, there's zoning, ordinances, codes, like all these different things that impact it. And so, but it's just, it's so interesting to me because he let me go on this journey and he equipped me. And now I'm not scared. I'm not scared.
Yeah.
And it's, the great thing is, I can't do my job, Kathryn, without doing this.
Yeah.
Because our families are stuck. They're staying with us way longer than they should have to because we can't find an affordable place to transition them to.
So you've equipped them. They're ready to go. They're ready to...
Yeah, and they're sitting.
Wow.
And we've got over 500 requests for assistance a year of families who still need us. And I have a family sitting here who can do it if we can just find a place for them to live. So it is my work.
Yeah.
It is my work. And it's the next step. This is the biggest obstacle. This is the biggest barrier. And so this is where we have to pour our energy into. And fortunately for me, and I thank God for it every day, I've got the most amazing staff on site that can keep everything the way that it is, where I get to be in this role of just encouraging them and helping problem solve and still casting that vision and focusing on strategy and our expansion. But I also am freed up to go do this work because it's just changed.
Yeah.
It's just changed. Well, you know what? It hasn't changed. It's been the work all along. I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
So until it became so overbearingly overwhelming for our families that I have no choice now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love everything you just said. Well, how do you take care of you?
So, and this is funny because I was kind of wondering what you would ask me about. And I am one of the ways that I practice self-care, a huge way that I take care of myself is I'm super disciplined in my routine. And when I say disciplined, I mean, I get up at the same time every day. I do the same things, like my quiet time, my prayer time happens before I go to work out. And then on the way to my workout, I'm listening to my podcast, which is the Bible recap, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, I just love it.
Fave.
I'm doing it for my 4th year in a row now. And it keeps me, I always do the Bible in a year, but I've done that specific thing for the
4
last
times.
4 years.
I've done it twice. I'm thinking about doing it again next year. I just love her.
Yes.
I just, it's Tara Cobble, if anyone's listening, the Bible recap.
Yes.
Changed my faith walk for sure.
Yeah, just but for me, knowing yourself, I think, is an important part of how you take care of yourself. And so for me, it's like, I have to have something that's holding me accountable every day to be in scripture. Like if I do individual studies and stuff, I'll go huge time frames throughout the year where I'm not in the word. And so making it a part of my daily rhythm is super important.
That's the accountability.
Yeah,
like
the accountability.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, I'm getting behind, and I've got that 8 in me that's like, can't get behind. So that is a part of my self-care. I do work out a ton. Like working out really hard, doing strength training and interval training, that kind of stuff makes me really happy. And so I do make sure I do that 6 days a week. But then, another way that I take care of myself is I'll go work out on Saturday morning and I'll come home and I'll take a shower and then I'll get in my pajamas for the rest of the day. And I'm not going to feel any kind of way about that, except glory. Like, glorious, this is amazing.
Sabbath.
Yes. Just making sure that and I mean, I say no to my kids. There's activities that they might want to do that I say no to. And now as a single mom, especially with a senior in high school, I can't even believe that. I don't look that old. Do I?
No. I'm right there with you, though.
I certainly don't feel that old. I am so young on the inside. But my kids, like they know Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Mom's going to be in the kitchen. I'm going to cook you great food. But that Sunday to Thursday stretch...
You might not see me.
You might, cutting myself slack with my kids and being able to say, when they're like, well, what's for dinner? I'm like, whatever you can fix. And I try, so like cutting myself some slack and that kind of stuff frees up my energy to be a kind of mom in much better ways, right. But I do really think that being a super disciplined person is me taking really good care of myself. Yeah. It's just how I
think you said the exact same thing when you go to bed at like some ungodly.
Yes.
Like
so that I forgot to
something.
say that. I forgot to say that. Yes. I am so rigidly protective of my sleep. Like, you'll see those social media memes that go around like, they're like, are we going to be up past 8? Like that really is a deal breaker for me because I know that if I don't get the appropriate amount of sleep, it's going to affect everything about my day. And all those disciplines go out the window.
I still haven't learned this from you. I just haven't. I mean, I try. Like this morning I woke up at 3 a.m. and it's like my brain starts and I can't shut it off. And I'm laying there and I'm like praying and somebody said repeat SLEEP like over and over in your head, just try to turn it off. And I'm doing all the things and then I'd probably sent myself 5 emails of things I need to do, and I wake up the next morning and I'm like, none of this is an emergency. Why?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so
I do understand, and I have a lot of people in my life who struggle with that too. I'm really grateful that I don't. I do not wake up in the middle of the night and worry about things. I really don't. So I'm super grateful that I don't. But I think my sleep routine, my daddy, like he made us sit 7 days a week. We were in bed by 8:30. We were up by 6:30.
Oh, so like we were born and raised in you.
Like it's how I was raised. Like there's such a part of me that feels like being a mature, responsible human being is going to bed early and getting up early.
So my dad was military, and so if I don't make my bed, it's like I'm a failure.
Yeah.
Which
is so weird. It's so weird, and it's like making your bed. Like you have 12 hours of satisfaction from that. Like it's like laundry. Like who cares? But we all do it. We all do it.
I know. Well, is there just anything else you would like people to know? Anything you wish people knew about you or Grace Place as we kind of close up today?
I'm just always, when given the opportunity, I just want to say how grateful I am. I'm super grateful. I'm grateful to be able to do what I do, first of all, because I absolutely love it. But I'm so grateful. It is never, ever going to be lost on me how beautiful it is, how much other people love it, how much this community loves it. Because it's the best story in the world to be able to tell our kids and our moms at Grace Place. It is. It's just this beautiful love story that the community's been writing and the Lord's been writing, and I could not be more grateful. So,
well, it's also I mean, it's clear the Lord has a hand here, but it's also your obedience and leadership. I often get asked, how does Grace Place do it, or from a marketing standpoint, and you've told your story really, really well. You've allowed the community to come alongside of you and tell it for you. You've had strong mission, core values, all of these things, and it's just a real example of doing good work, and not just doing good work. You're telling the story of the good work, because how do we amplify anything or multiply anything if we don't tell the story of the good work? So
right.
Congratulations.
And you know what? I would say something, especially to women. I do feel like, especially Christian women, like we are always trying so hard to like make sure that God is getting all the glory and we're humble.
Yes.
And it took me 5 years to even open up to the community about my testimony, like my own personal testimony that has so much to do with why this work is so important to me, like in a very sacred, soul deep way. And so in the name of humility, right? You don't want to make it about you. You don't want to make, and I see women still, even in a culture that is celebrating women and we're empowering women, I still see women shrinking back and not stepping fully into the gifts God has given them, the strengths God has given them. And I just think if God created you in all of your splendor, glorify him. So stand confidently in who he has created you to be and how he has equipped you. Stop hiding from that, because every time you do, if he's really your creator, if you are really made fearfully and wonderfully made by him, everything about you glorifies him.
Yeah.
And when you reduce who you are, you're reducing who he is.
I mean, our testimony is how we spread, right? It's how God gets the glory. And if we're not giving the testimony and telling the story, then
right. It's okay for you to know what you're good at.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
Amen. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.